Chapter 6. Abandoning the Village of Nihaoi. The inn was on fire. Black smoke billowed from the front of the building, choking the air, as flames ate holes in the rice paper screens. Miuko stepped from the bath, sliding her feet into the extra pair of sandals, and was surprised to find that her ankle no longer pained her. A side effect of the curse? She did not linger on this thought for long, however, for as she raced across the inner courtyard, shouts rang through the blaze. It was her father, and he was begging someone to put out the fire. Please, this was his home. This was his father's home, and his father's before him. Give us the Yagra, Otorijai. Miuko recognized that voice. Lido. He and the priests must have come for her. You're mad, her father told them. There may be demons about, but my daughter is not one of them. She could just see him through the charred screens. He was at the front door, where the flames were starting to lick hungrily at the beams. One of her mother's spirit dolls toppled from the rafters, mouth agape in silent horror as its body was consumed by fire. Father! Miuko tried the steps, but she was repelled by a sudden burst of heat. He turned. Miuko, get away from here! She had always tried, with middling success, to be a good, obedient daughter, but in this case she didn't think her father would object to a little insubordination. He was her father. He was the only family she had left. Now, he limped from one room to another, stopping and starting as new blazes sprang up in his path. In the front garden, the priests were chanting. Miuko looked around. In the corner of the yard was a trough that belonged to the stables, and a couple horse blankets that should have been in storage until autumn. Briefly, she wondered why they were out of place, but she did not have time to wonder long. She was already grabbing the blanket. She was already dunking it. She was already racing back to the main building to beat at the flames. But before she could enter the building, the rafters crumbled. The fire roared. She was thrown back into the courtyard, landing hard on the flagstones. Undeterred, she scrambled up again, racing along the veranda, trying to locate her father in the blaze. There he was, on the ground in what was once their kitchen, half hidden behind a heap of what had once been a wall. His head full of hair was pathetically scorched, and his neck and shoulder had been badly burned, but he was alive. Father, she shouted. He looked towards her. Through the smoke, she saw his eyes widen. She saw his face twist from hope to horror. Disgust flared in his eyes. No, he was muttering again. But Miuko could see the word on his lips. No, no, you're not my daughter, get away from me. Miuko halted. Her eyes stung. Without meaning to, she touched her cheeks, afraid for a moment that they had turned blue as water of the sea. But her hands were the same color of chestnut cream, her fingernails in need of a trim. What had changed since he saw her last? A nap? A quartet of melodramatic priests? A threat of ruination upon his family legacy? How could these things turn Otori Rohiro against his own daughter? His only daughter? Xiaoha, he shouted. What have you done with her? There was that word again. Death woman. Father, it's me. Miuko started forward, but before she could reach the collapsed wall of the kitchen, the priests stormed around the side of the building. Two carried banners inked with magic. The other carried bamboo staves. Seeing her, they cried out and ran at her, chanting. Miuko couldn't move. This could not be real. The priests, their incantations, the smoke curling across the sky like the many-fingered hands of some depraved god. It was but a dream. She was still on the floor of the bath. She would wake at any second. The water would be warm, and in the kitchen her father would be forming rice balls with his sturdy hands. Be gone from this place. He was in the kitchen, not puttering about, but railing at her from the ruins. Though he was injured, his voice was like an avalanche, so loud it surely must have frightened off every dog and cat and sensitive Ozomachu, sleep spirit, for miles. Stunned, Miuko understood then that he did not mutter because he didn't understand how to regulate his volume. He muttered because otherwise he too would be uncommonly loud. Sipaisha, Sichire. Go, he thundered. You are not welcome here. Miuko couldn't help herself. She was transforming back into the good daughter, the obedient daughter, the one who would have done anything her father asked of her. She ran. No longer lugubrious but inflamed with spiritual fervor, the priest chased her to the village border, but she did not stop running there. Past the abandoned markets, the overrun fields, the caved-in chicken shed, and now, succumbing to the earth, she ran. She only looked back once. At the edge of the village, 3 of the priests were erecting banners on bamboo poles, the fresh indigo ink gleaming in the morning sun. Beyond them, the fire at the inn was dying down, ebbing from the building like a tide, leaving a wreck upon the beach. Beside the ruins, her father was standing with a priest so tall he could only have been Lido, who seemed to be consoling him. Her father was alive, but the notion brought Miuko little comfort. He was alive, but he thought she was a demon, and he no longer wanted her.